Attention, listeners! Ever witnessed a moment where prejudice backfires spectacularly? This is a tale of a heated summer day that shook a quiet suburban town to its core. White Karen tells black woman to leave her own pool, unaware she's the police chief. They say that summer heat can bring out the best in people, but sometimes, it conjures the worst. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, where the lawns are perfectly trimmed and the community pool glistens with promise, a single heated confrontation will set social media ablaze. It's a standoff that begins innocently enough, a woman demanding someone else's eviction from the pool. But what she doesn't realize is the person she's challenging is no ordinary neighbor. She's the newly appointed chief of police. By the end of this explosive story, destinies will collide, secrets will unravel, and karma will strike with poetic precision. Hold on, because this story gets even wilder. Duskboro was the kind of suburban town people wrote about in glossy real estate brochures. Streets named after trees, maple, oak, sycamore, cut through rows of cookie-cutter houses with neatly painted fences. The bright sunshine of mid-July shimmered off windshields and garden hoses, while the aroma of freshly cut grass hung in the air. Children squealed in inflatable pools in their backyards, and the more fortunate among them scurried off to the neighborhood pool for a real swim. Standing at the entrance of the Duskboro Community Recreation Center was a sign that read "Members Only," a rule enforced only casually by the Homeowners Association. The facility itself was well maintained. White lounge chairs lined the perimeter, large blue umbrellas offered respite from the sun, and the aqua-blue water seemed to beckon everyone to dive in. A lifeguard sat perched atop a high stool, squinting at the blinding sun more often than at the swimmers. On this particular afternoon, the place was full but not overcrowded. Families sat around small tables, sipping fruit punch and nibbling on watermelon slices. Teenagers cannonballed off the deep end's diving board. An older couple in matching swimsuits floated lazily on colorful inflatable loungers. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, at least, not yet. At the corner of the pool, closest to the shallow steps, sat a woman named Joyce Smith. She looked like she belonged there, comfortable, confident, and relaxed in the water. She wore a simple, sporty one-piece bathing suit. Her dark skin glowed in the midday sun, and her braided hair was up in a neat ponytail. Joyce's entire demeanor radiated calmness, a quiet sense of belonging that was neither boastful nor timid. Joyce's eyes were closed. She let herself float on her back, drifting in tranquil circles. The day had been busy, a conference call early in the morning, a meet-and-greet session at City Hall, and a million other tasks that came with her brand-new position. She had only been inaugurated from a neighboring city to become the newly appointed chief of police. Adjusting to a new environment while carrying the weight of her role was no small feat, but Joyce took it in stride. She had always believed in building bridges and forging community ties before flexing any authority. That's why she had bought a property here, to live among the people she served. While the mayor had assured her she'd be given a grand tour, she wanted to experience the daily life of Duskboro residents on her own terms. The community pool membership had come as part of her homeowner package, and though she suspected she might not have too many leisure afternoons once her workload picked up, this weekend felt like the perfect time to relax. So there she was, minding her own business, floating in the pool. She had no idea she was about to be at the center of a storm that would prove the town was not quite the picture-perfect haven it purported to be. At the opposite side of the pool, perched on a lounge chair, sat Karen Billingsley. Karen was a staple in the Homeowners Association committees, always the first to volunteer for new rule enforcement drives. She was a woman who took pride in her sense of authority, though it was authority bestowed upon her in minimal and often informal ways. Blonde hair pinned under a large straw hat, bright pink lipstick, and a pair of oversized sunglasses, Karen was not just a person, but a presence. She noticed Joyce the moment she stepped into the pool area. Though Joyce's name was new in the neighborhood, Karen had heard rumors someone had moved into the vacant property on Maple Avenue, a well-paying house, if the gossip were to be believed. She'd also picked up on passing conversation about the new arrival's important job, something in city administration, or so the rumors went. But Karen, typically so vigilant in collecting every scrap of local intel, had missed the memo that Joyce was Duskboro's brand new chief of police. Perhaps more significant was Karen's immediate reaction to Joyce's presence at the pool. She recognized an unfamiliar black woman in what she considered her space. Her mind went into overdrive, searching for an explanation or a justification to challenge Joyce's right to be there. Karen had a routine: she'd always watch who entered the pool area, especially those she did not personally recognize. She liked to flash her knowledge of neighborhood rules, her stern "you must be new here" approach. Often, it was not overtly racist in her mind, or so she told herself, but it was certainly driven by prejudice, whether consciously or not. Karen was primed to suspect any non-white face of being an interloper. But on this hot July afternoon, she wasn't just suspicious, she was itching for a confrontation. She claimed to do it for the good of the community. In reality, she enjoyed the adrenaline rush that came with policing others. So, she rose from her lounge chair, set down her magazine, and glided across the hot cement floors in her flip-flops, a determined expression plastered on her face. She was on a mission. When she reached Joyce's side of the pool, she cleared her throat loudly. Joyce was still floating, blissfully unaware. Karen, never one to wait, spoke abruptly. "Excuse me." "Hello?" Joyce opened her eyes, gently placed her feet on the pool floor, and stood up straight in the shallow end. Water trickled from her braids as she furrowed her brow. "Yes," she said, her voice polite but tinged with a hint of confusion. "Well, I couldn't help but notice you," Karen began, taking off her sunglasses in a gesture meant to intimidate. "I haven't seen you around here before. Are you a member?" There was an edge to her question, as though membership to the Duskboro Community Recreation Center was a sacred privilege guarded by Karen herself. Joyce tilted her head slightly. "Yes, I am. I'm new to the neighborhood. I moved into the Maple Avenue house a couple of weeks ago." Karen studied Joyce's face, skepticism dripping from her gaze. "Maple Avenue, you say? Well, I know a lot of people around here, and no one mentioned we had new neighbors." Joyce remained calm, her posture poised. She had dealt with scrutiny and suspicion before, though rarely this blatant in a place that was supposed to be her home. With a measured voice, she replied, "I assure you, I live there. I have my membership card in my bag if you need to see it." Karen let out a half laugh, half snort. "Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to see it, yes. I just want to make sure everyone here is following the rules." At that moment, a mix of annoyance and disbelief flickered across Joyce's features. Still, she was determined to keep the peace. "Okay, give me a minute," she said, wading toward the pool stairs. "I'll show you my membership." But Karen was already shaking her head. "You know what? Never mind," she said with a huff. "I don't need to see it. The HOA office is just down the street, and I can verify it myself later. Right now, I'd like you to leave. This pool is for the community, not for guests who might not belong." For the first time, Joyce felt a twinge of anger. She was not simply a paying member, she was also the chief of police, sworn to protect and serve, even people like Karen. Yet here she was, being told to leave her own pool. Still, she attempted composure. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I told you I am a member. I have every right to be here." Karen put her hands on her hips, drawing the attention of a few onlookers. One or two swimmers had paused to watch the confrontation, their expressions a mix of curiosity and discomfort. "I don't think you're understanding the situation," Karen said in a voice that tried to sound authoritative. "If you don't leave, I will have to call the police." Joyce stared at Karen in disbelief, her heart pounding now, not in fear, but in sheer frustration. She had not yet revealed her position in the police department. Something in her told her to hold off, to see how far Karen would go. "Ma'am, I am not leaving," Joyce said, crossing her arms. "I have a legitimate right to be here." Karen's jaw tightened. She turned to face the other bystanders, as if to rally them to her cause, but most people looked away or continued floating, not wanting to get involved. With a deep, theatrical breath, Karen flipped open her phone and started tapping. "Hello, 911? Yes, I need the police at the Duskboro Community Recreation Center immediately. There's someone here who refuses to leave the pool area. She's causing a disturbance." Joyce blinked in astonishment. A swirl of conflicting emotions rushed through her: anger at Karen's blatant bigotry, frustration at the humiliation of it all, and a sick feeling of dread about what this call might set into motion. She had, after all, come to this community to foster trust in law enforcement and bridge divides. Yet here she was, about to be confronted by officers from her own force unless she put an end to the charade. Something inside Joyce told her to wait just a bit longer. Perhaps it was a test of character, a test of the system she was about to lead. She took a deep breath and remained silent as Karen rattled off her complaint. For better or worse, the confrontation was set in motion. The echoes of Karen's phone call rippled through the community pool, and the quiet hum of a summer day was about to erupt into a spectacle. Don't go anywhere, this is where the story takes a jaw-dropping turn. Subscribe to Adam Alpha for more gripping tales of justice and redemption. The Duskboro Police Department was located barely a few blocks from the pool. It was a modest building, newly renovated with funds from a county grant. Inside, the dispatch center was handling routine calls: a minor fender bender on Elm Street, a noise complaint about teenagers skateboarding in the grocery store parking lot, a cat stuck in a tree, that sort of day. When Karen's call came in, it initially seemed unremarkable. The dispatcher asked for details. Karen described a trespassing incident with suspicious behavior and insisted that the woman was aggressive and uncooperative. Two officers on duty, Officer Matthew Higgins and Officer Clara Delgado, were dispatched to the scene. They hopped into their cruiser, siren silent for now, because it was reported as a non-violent disturbance. But both officers braced themselves. Trespassing calls in this particular neighborhood rarely ended up being serious, but there was always the potential for confrontation. As they drove, Delgado turned to Higgins. "You know, word on the street is we have a new chief," she said, adjusting her seatbelt. Higgins nodded. "Yeah, I heard. Joyce Smith, right? She's supposed to officially start next week, but I think she's been settling in." Delgado shrugged. "I hope she's better than the last chief. That was a fiasco, if you ask me." "Don't even get me started," Higgins said, rolling his eyes. The previous chief had been mired in scandal, from mishandling funds to nepotism, and was quietly replaced without much explanation. Let's see if the new chief can change the department's reputation. They arrived at the recreation center to find a small gathering of onlookers near the pool entrance. Karen stood at the edge of the water, phone in hand, a triumphant but tense expression on her face. Joyce was still standing in the shallow end, arms folded. A few families had started gathering their belongings, sensing the tension that was about to escalate, while others watched in morbid fascination. The officers made their way around the pool's perimeter. Karen rushed forward, gesturing wildly. "Officers, finally! We have a trespasser who refuses to leave. She's been hostile and threatening." Joyce arched an eyebrow. "Threatening? I've done no such thing," she said softly, though her voice carried a note of pent-up frustration. The officers tried to calm Karen. "Ma'am, please step aside," Delgado said, her voice steady. "We'll handle this." Karen nodded, stepping back but remaining close enough to observe. Officer Higgins turned his attention to Joyce. "Ma'am, we got a call about trespassing. Are you a member of this pool?" Joyce nodded firmly, then gestured toward her belongings on a nearby lounge chair. "My membership card is in the front pocket of that bag. You're welcome to see it." Delgado took a step toward the chair, rummaging carefully, then pulled out a plastic card emblazoned with the Duskboro Community Recreation Center logo in Joyce's name. Delgado scanned it. The membership was valid. When Delgado held the card up for Higgins to see, Karen's face turned an unsettling shade of crimson. Yet, she refused to back down. "That might be someone else's card," she blurted out. "Or maybe it's forged." Delgado shook her head, stepping carefully across the wet pavement. "Ma'am, forging a membership card for a small community pool isn't exactly common, and her ID matches the name on the membership." Higgins approached Joyce with a more sympathetic expression. "Can you show me a valid ID, just so we can confirm your name matches this membership?" Joyce was silent for a moment. This was the final straw. She had come here to relax, to enjoy the day, and was being put through an embarrassing charade because of one woman's prejudice. She could easily defuse this by revealing her identity as the new police chief, But a part of her wanted to see if these officers would handle this with fairness and respect without that knowledge. She stepped out of the pool, retrieving her wallet from the same bag. She handed Higgins her driver's license. He compared it to the membership card, perfect match. He offered a tiny smile, as if to say, "I'm sorry you're going through this." Karen's mouth fell open slightly, as though words were failing her for the first time in her life. I was just looking out for the neighborhood," she stammered. "We have rules, you know." She came in here acting like she owned the place. Joyce's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Actually, I do pay for a portion of it via the membership fees," she said. Then her posture straightened. "Officers, since you're here, I'd like to file a complaint for harassment." Karen's head snapped toward Joyce, her eyes wide. "Harassment," she repeated, as though the word was foreign to her. Delgado cleared her throat. "All right, ma'am, we can hear your complaint. Let's step away from the pool to talk." Joyce gave a small nod. "I think it's best we have this conversation somewhere more private." Karen's sense of victory drained away. She shot panicked glances at the departing families, some of whom seemed more than eager to whisper about the spectacle. In her mind, she was the one who always got her way, who always had the last word. But something about Joyce's calm confidence was making her uneasy. Without a doubt, the unraveling had begun, and the officers, unwittingly, were about to uncover a much bigger truth than they'd bargained for. They left the pool area and gathered near a small, shaded patio by the recreation center's vending machines. The crisp scent of chlorine still hung in the air. The thrumming of a soda machine provided a strange soundtrack to the tense conversation. Officer Delgado began. "Ma'am," she turned to Joyce, "can you tell us exactly what happened?" Joyce took a breath. "I came here to swim. I'm a recent homeowner in this community, so I have a membership. I was just minding my business when this woman demanded I leave, accused me of trespassing, and then called 911, claiming I was aggressive and threatening." Delgado scribbled notes on a small notepad. "And you're saying that none of that is true, that you made no threats, correct?" Joyce's eyes flicked toward Karen, whose arms were crossed defensively. "I never threatened her. In fact, I offered to show her my membership card before she even called you." She refused to look at it. Karen let out a short bark of laughter. "You were rude," she exclaimed. "All you had to do was show me your card right away, and we wouldn't be here." Joyce paused, pressing her lips into a thin line. "I told you I had a membership. You told me to leave anyway." Higgins glanced from Karen to Joyce. "All right, I think we've established that Miss Smith is a legitimate member," he said carefully. Then, turning to Karen, he asked, "Why did you assume she was trespassing?" Karen's cheeks flushed a deeper red. She hated being put on the spot. "We have a tight-knit neighborhood. I know everyone. I've never seen her before, so I thought she was some random stranger." Joyce tilted her head, her voice gentle but firm. "This is a big community, Miss Billingsley. You couldn't possibly know every single resident, especially new ones. Perhaps you should have asked for my membership card in a more polite, less accusatory way." Karen shot back, "And maybe you shouldn't walk in like you own the place." At that point, Delgado sensed the hostility escalating. She raised a calming hand. "All right, let's keep this civil." Officer Higgins, who had been studying Joyce more intently, seemed to recall something. The new police chief's official photos had circulated via internal email. The face, the name, the realization was dawning on him. His eyes went wide for a fraction of a second before he cleared his throat. "Ma'am," Higgins addressed Joyce, speaking in a more respectful tone than before, "could you verify something for me?" Joyce seemed to sense where this was heading. She inhaled softly and reached into her bag. From a zippered compartment, she retrieved a slim black wallet. Inside, she kept her official police ID and badge. Holding it in her palm, she extended it discreetly toward the officers. Karen's eyes darted suspiciously between them. Delgado's expression shifted from polite concern to one of shock, then respect. Higgins had half expected this but still looked a bit nervous as he read the official credentials: Joyce Smith, Chief of Police, Duskboro. Delgado said nothing for a moment, then she slowly looked up at Joyce, blinking rapidly. "Chief Smith," she uttered in a near whisper. Karen, however, could not see the ID and still had no idea. She was fidgeting, probably already rehearsing how to spin the situation in her favor. "What? What's going on? Why are you both so silent?" With careful steps, Delgado stepped away from Karen and beckoned her partner to follow. They exchanged hushed words, confirming that this was indeed their soon-to-be boss. The tension in the air took on a new dimension. The officers realized they were dealing with their superior, a woman they would be working for in a matter of days. After a moment, Delgado cleared her throat and motioned for Karen to come closer. "Miss Billingsley," she said, her voice more authoritative now, "the person you've been calling a trespasser is, in fact, a legitimate member of the community. Moreover," she glanced at Joyce, who gave her a tiny nod of permission, "she is Chief Joyce Smith, the newly appointed head of the Duskboro Police Department." A quiet hush fell over the group. Karen's eyes widened to the size of saucers as her jaw went slack. She stared at Joyce as though seeing her for the first time. You're a police officer," she finally managed to squeak out, her tone a bizarre mixture of disbelief and panic. Joyce slipped the ID back into her bag, her posture calm. "Yes, I am. I moved to Duskboro recently to serve as chief of police." Karen stared at her sandals, her cheeks burning a brilliant scarlet. I didn't know," she mumbled, her voice shaky. "That's obvious," Joyce replied quietly. "But it shouldn't matter if I was the chief of police or not. You assumed I didn't belong because why?" Tears of humiliation shimmered in Karen's eyes, but she blinked them away, refusing to address the question head-on. I was just trying to protect the community," she repeated lamely. Joyce inhaled deeply. "I'd like to file a complaint," as I said. "This kind of harassment can't just be brushed aside. We need to have a record of it." Higgins and Delgado exchanged glances. This was a delicate situation. On one hand, the new chief was well within her rights to file a complaint. On the other, they were uncertain how it might reflect on the department or the broader community. Delgado nodded. "Of course, Chief, Miss Smith. We can fill out a report." Karen took a step closer, her eyes pleading. "Please, I didn't know. If I had known who you were, I never would have." Joyce's gaze hardened. "That's exactly the problem," she interrupted. "You should treat everyone with respect, regardless of who they are. I came to this pool for the same reason you did, to relax on a hot day. But you turned it into a nightmare. What if it was someone else, someone without a badge, who couldn't defend themselves? How do you think they'd feel?" Karen had no answer. She looked pitiful, stripped of her usual bravado. The officers led Joyce through the process of filing a complaint, writing down her statement, the gist of the altercation, and the words exchanged. Karen hovered nearby, wringing her hands, occasionally muttering something about overreaction or misunderstanding. But the stone was cast. Karen was about to face the consequences of her actions, and though the immediate fallout would be contained to a police report, it was only a matter of time before the repercussions rippled through the entire community, exposing the underbelly of bigotry that lingered beneath Duskboro's picturesque facade. News traveled fast in Duskboro. Mowing a manicured lawn by the next morning, word had spread that Karen Billingsley tried to kick the new police chief out of the community pool. The story morphed with each retelling. Some accounts made Karen sound like she was physically threatening Joyce. Others described Joyce as revealing her badge in a dramatic, Hollywood-style confrontation. While details were embellished, the core truth remained the same. Karen had effectively racially profiled a black homeowner who happened to be the new chief of police and had called 911 on her, only to be humiliated when the truth came out. Friends texted friends. Neighbors whispered in grocery store aisles. The employees at the local Starbucks and actual Starbucks store on Jefferson Avenue served coffee with a side of gossip. Several folks who had witnessed the scene posted on social media pictures of the police cruiser outside the pool, captions reading, "Racism in Duskboro," or "Chief Smith's first day off is ruined by a Karen." Karen discovered the rumor mill in the worst way possible. She woke up that morning to find her phone flooded with messages, some from acquaintances demanding to know if the rumors were true, others from people condemning her. Her social media feeds were ablaze with scathing comments. Suddenly, she was the protagonist of a viral local scandal, and she had no idea how to handle it. After a few frantic hours of damage control, Karen decided to go on the offensive. She posted a lengthy note on Nextdoor, the neighborhood app, proclaiming her innocence. "I was just doing my civic duty in making sure only authorized members used our pool. I had no idea who Miss Smith was, and I certainly would not have called the police had I known she was our new chief. Everyone knows I've always acted in the best interest of our community. Please do not believe the vile rumors suggesting otherwise." Her post triggered a flood of replies. Some neighbors voiced support, praising Karen for keeping the community safe. Others called her out for her behavior, asking why she hadn't apologized to the chief directly. Still others pointed to a pattern of her singling out people of color in community spaces. Amid this digital chaos, Joyce tried to go about her business. She attended a morning briefing at City Hall, where she met the mayor and a few city council members. The conversation naturally drifted toward the incident. The mayor, an older white man with a carefully groomed mustache, sounded supportive but also concerned about the optics. He quietly asked Joyce if she wanted to drop the harassment complaint to avoid stirring tensions in the community. Joyce's face remained neutral. "Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your concern, but if I don't hold people accountable now, how can I expect to hold others accountable later? That's not how trust is built." He gave her a hesitant nod, then changed the subject to budget allocations. After the meeting, Joyce visited the Duskboro Police Department for the first time as their leader. A mix of emotions coursed through her. She was proud to be in a position to institute reforms and healing in the community, but she was also acutely aware that she was a black woman stepping into a role that had been, for the entirety of Duskboro's history, occupied by white men. The officers' eyes followed her as she walked through the halls, some with curiosity, others with clear admiration. A few looked away, uncertain how to engage. She called a department-wide meeting in the briefing room, a large space with rows of chairs and a podium at the front. Close to 30 officers gathered, some in uniform, others in plain clothes. Officer Higgins and Officer Delgado were there, giving her respectful nods from the back of the room. Joyce stepped up to the podium, feeling the weight of the moment. She spoke calmly but firmly. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Chief Joyce Smith. Some of you may already know me by reputation and a few of you by unfortunate incident." A ripple of subdued laughter moved through the room. "I'm not here to dwell on that. I'm here to work with each and every one of you to make Duskboro a safer place, safe for everyone. I've read the departmental reports, the policies, and the community feedback about policing. We have work to do, but together, I believe we can do it. I believe in rebuilding trust, and trust begins with accountability, transparency, and respect." She glanced around the room, meeting as many gazes as she could. "Let me assure you, I'm a fair leader, but I won't tolerate discrimination on duty or off duty. We represent the law, and that means we must uphold it equally for all people. I'm looking forward to working alongside you to make sure that happens." The speech was brief but impactful. When she finished, a few of the officers clapped, some more enthusiastically than others. Joyce felt a sliver of relief. It was her first official act as chief, setting the tone. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of Duskboro, Karen's phone buzzed incessantly. Each notification made her stomach churn. Her reputation was taking a beating, and she couldn't seem to silence the voices calling her out. Anxiety gnawed at her. She considered the possibility of leaving the neighborhood, but that seemed like an overreaction, or at least, she wasn't willing to concede that yet. One thing was certain, the rumors had ignited, and the entire community was on edge. The big question remained, what consequences would actually befall Karen Billingsley, and how would the new police chief handle this public fiasco? That evening, Karen decided to try a different tack. She put on a crisp blouse, combed her hair neatly, and marched down to the police department. The plan was to request a private audience with Chief Smith, hoping to smooth things over. She'd apologize, maybe come up with a charitable event they could host together, anything to salvage her standing in the community. Upon arriving at the station, she explained her purpose to the front desk officer, who told her the chief was in a meeting. Karen waited in a small lobby area that smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale coffee. She nervously flipped through a magazine without retaining a single word. Eventually, a young officer emerged and beckoned her down the hallway to a small conference room. Karen's palms were sweating. She realized this was the first time in her life she'd set foot in a police department for anything other than volunteer friend of the law events. She was on the other side now, seeking an audience to rectify her mistake. Joyce was seated at a table, reviewing some documents. She looked up as Karen entered. Karen tried to smile, but it came out wobbly. Joyce's expression was cordial but non-committal. "Miss Billingsley," Joyce said, "what can I do for you?" Karen sat down opposite her. She swallowed, realizing she had no easy script for this moment. "Chief Smith," she began, I wanted to come here in person and apologize about what happened at the pool." Joyce set her papers aside, folding her hands on the table. "Go on." Karen leaned forward, lowering her voice as though sharing a secret. "I truly didn't know who you were. It was a misunderstanding, and I overreacted. I see that now." Joyce studied Karen's face. She didn't detect genuine remorse, only a fear of consequences. "And what exactly do you think you did wrong?" Joyce asked, her tone even. Karen's lips parted, but no immediate response came. Finally, she stammered, "I shouldn't have assumed you didn't belong there. I should have given you a chance to show your membership card without calling the police." Joyce nodded slowly, but her eyes remained sharp. "That's true. But is that all?" Karen squirmed in her seat. This was going nowhere near as smoothly as she'd hoped. "Well," she said, searching for the right words, "I guess I shouldn't have been so quick to think that you were a trespasser." Joyce's gaze didn't waver. "You had no basis for that assumption. And what troubles me most is that this might not be an isolated incident. I've been told by more than a few residents that you've done this kind of thing before, questioning people of color in community spaces." Karen's face blanched. "That's not true. I mean, it's not about race. Sometimes I just see someone unfamiliar, and I get protective of our neighborhood." Joyce inhaled, feeling her patience fray. "Karen, you called the police on me in my own pool, despite my attempts to show you I belonged. You threatened to have me arrested for trespassing, and you have the nerve to sit here and deny it had anything to do with racial bias?" Karen's eyes darted away, tears threatening to spill. "I'm sorry, Chief Smith. I'm sorry for the trouble I caused you. I hope we can just put this behind us for the good of the community." Joyce glanced at her watch. It was nearly 7 p.m., and she had a stack of work to do. She didn't relish the idea of a prolonged confrontation. "The harassment complaint is already on record," she said. "That won't just disappear. There are consequences for misusing 911 and falsifying reports about aggression." Karen's head jerked up. "But I didn't lie." Joyce's brow creased. "You claimed I was threatening. Multiple witnesses said I was calm the entire time. That's not just an overstatement, that's a false report." Karen's bottom lip quivered. She could sense the precariousness of her position. "Please, Chief, you don't have to push this. It could ruin my life." Joyce's voice softened a fraction. "Your life isn't going to be ruined, Miss Billingsley, but there will be accountability. You might have to pay a fine or face community service hours, depending on what the city attorney decides. I have no control over that process. What I can do is insist on a thorough review of any pattern of behavior like this, because if there is one, it's a sign that we need deeper interventions in this neighborhood." Karen's shoulders slumped. She realized that her attempt at damage control had only confirmed that the chief was not going to let it slide. Before Karen could muster another plea, Joyce stood. "I have other matters to attend to. Thank you for coming in, Miss Billingsley. If you have more to say, I suggest you speak to your attorney or wait for further contact from the department." Stunned, Karen rose from her chair, clutching her purse strap. She wanted to scream that she wasn't a racist, that this was all a huge misunderstanding, but she realized her words would only ring hollow. She mumbled a strangled thank you and hurried out of the conference room. That night, Karen sat in her living room, the lights dimmed, phone in hand, scrolling through social media. The condemnation was growing louder, and she felt her pulse pound with every new comment. Someone had even started a petition on a local community forum, demanding that the HOA remove her from any official committee positions. She read her name in lines like, "Karen Billingsley must be held accountable for racist harassment." Tears slid down Karen's cheeks as she realized she was no longer the neighborhood busybody who could do no wrong. She was now the outcast. And as much as she raged against it, she was also forced to confront a cold, hard truth about herself: she was the one who set it all in motion. A week passed. The Dusk Borough Office received a formal complaint from Chief Smith, supported by the statements from Officers Delgado and Higgins and several witness accounts from the pool. While the city attorney reviewed the case, the Dusk Borough HOA board also convened to discuss Karen's actions, spurred by the mounting complaints from other residents. At the HOA meeting, held in the recreation center's multi-purpose room, tension was high. The board members, 5 in total, sat at a long table, facing a small audience. Usually, these meetings revolved around mundane topics like budget allocation for landscaping or the scheduling of the annual community barbecue. Today, the air crackled with confrontation. Nearly 40 residents attended, far more than usual. Some came out of concern, others wanted to witness the spectacle. A hush fell as the board president, an older man named Lester Wright, called the meeting to order. "We have a serious matter on our hands," Lester began, his voice grim. "One of our residents, Miss Karen Billingsley, is accused of harassing another resident, Miss Joyce Smith, at our community pool." Lester proceeded to lay out the facts. Multiple witnesses had corroborated that Karen refused to accept Miss Smith's membership status, escalated the situation by calling 911, and falsely accused Miss Smith of being aggressive. "We, the HOA board, must decide how to address this issue. Does anyone wish to speak?" Karen, seated in the front row, clutched her hands together. She wanted to speak first, to defend herself, but her mouth felt like cotton. Before she could force words out, another voice spoke up. A woman in a floral sundress stood. "My name is Cynthia Moore. I've lived here for 10 years. I witnessed Karen harass a Hispanic couple last summer. She claimed they were loitering at the playground and threatened to call the police if they didn't show ID. That's not the only incident. I've seen her question black teenagers at the basketball court. She approaches them and demands to know where they live." Karen's face blanched. She began shaking her head, but Cynthia pressed on. "Everyone's been too scared to speak up, but now that we see what she did to Miss Smith, who is our police chief, no less, people are finding the courage to come forward. Karen needs to be removed from the HOA committees. She's made our community feel unsafe for years." A few scattered claps and murmurs rose in agreement. Karen shot to her feet, her eyes glistening with tears. "Years? That's a lie. I only ever asked questions when people looked suspicious, and if they're not from our neighborhood, they shouldn't be using our facilities." Cynthia folded her arms, unimpressed. "Miss Billingsley, are you the membership enforcement officer? Because I'm pretty sure that's not a job title." More chuckles rippled through the crowd. Karen's lips trembled. She spun toward Lester Wright. "Mr. Wright, you know me. I volunteered at every HOA event for the past decade. I've helped keep this neighborhood safe. You can't just..." Lester frowned, holding up a hand. "Karen, let's maintain order. We've got multiple accounts of you aggressively policing your neighbors. This board must ensure that the actions of any individual do not jeopardize the sense of safety and inclusivity in our community." Before Karen could retort, a younger man stood up, holding up his phone. "There's a video," he announced, tapping the screen. "I was at the pool that day. I filmed part of it when I heard Karen yelling. It's gone viral on social media." He turned the phone around, showing a brief clip of Karen pointing at Joyce in the pool, yelling something indistinct, but the words "call the police" were crystal clear. It was damning evidence. Karen's heart pounded. She felt cornered, trapped. Lester took a breath, seeming uncomfortable with the tension. Karen, we've received multiple complaints. The evidence is conclusive. Under the HOA bylaws, we can remove a member from all committees for behavior deemed detrimental to community harmony. The question is, do we do so permanently or temporarily, and should we consider additional sanctions? Karen's eyes brimmed with tears, her voice cracking. Please, Mr. Wright, everyone, I never meant, her words faltered as she saw the cold stares from the crowd. She had lost their trust. After a brief deliberation, the board voted. 4 out of 5 members agreed to remove Karen from all HOA committees for the remainder of the year, pending any further disciplinary action if the legal complaint found her guilty of misusing the 911 system and harassing a neighbor. A hush fell. Karen covered her face with her hands, tears streaming, as she stumbled from the front row. She raced out of the multi-purpose room, ignoring the pitying or disapproving glances of the bystanders. Outside, the sun was setting over Duskboro. The orange-pink sky looked almost surreal compared to the turmoil Karen felt inside. She rushed to her car, fumbling for her keys. Once inside, she sat in the driver's seat, tears blurring her vision. She had always thrived on attention, on being the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood order. Now, that same community was turning against her, some with anger, some with relief. She realized she had lost more than just a committee position. She had lost a sense of purpose that, twisted though it might have been, had defined her life in Duskboro. About a month after the incident, Karen received a letter from the city attorney's office, inviting her to participate in a restorative justice program. It was an alternative resolution approach that brought together offenders and victims to reach a mutual understanding and possibly avoid a trial. Karen eyed the letter with suspicion. She had never heard of such a thing. Part of her just wanted the situation to go away, but if there was a chance to avoid a public trial and a criminal record, she'd take it. And so it was that Karen found herself in a small conference room one sunny afternoon, seated across from Joyce Smith and a trained mediator. The atmosphere was tense. Karen's eyes darted nervously around the room, while Joyce maintained a calm, composed demeanor. The mediator, a middle-aged woman with a kind smile, explained the process. We're here to discuss the incident that occurred at the community pool on July 14th. The hope is that both parties can express their views, take accountability, and, if possible, come to a resolution that avoids a formal court proceeding. Each of you will get a chance to speak. Let's begin. Karen swallowed hard. She still harbored a simmering resentment that Joyce had filed the complaint in the first place, but she also recognized that she was in deep trouble. She exhaled shakily. I'd like to say I'm sorry, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry for calling the police on you, Miss Smith. Joyce nodded, her expression measured. Thank you for saying that. Why did you do it? Karen hesitated, not wanting to lay bare her prejudices. I panicked, she said. I saw someone I didn't recognize at the pool. I thought they were trespassing. Joyce gave a small, almost sad smile. And why did you assume I was trespassing? Other new residents come and go without you confronting them, right? Karen sighed, her eyes glistening. I can't explain it in a way that will sound good. Maybe it was subconscious. I saw you, a black woman, in our pool, and I guess I assumed you didn't belong. The words hung in the air, raw and damning. Tears slipped down Karen's cheeks. She continued haltingly, I was wrong, and now everyone hates me, or at least it feels that way. I've been threatened, harassed online. People call me racist all the time. I never thought of myself that way. Joyce remained composed, though her eyes glimmered with empathy. Karen, I don't wish you harm, but this is the reality many people of color face every day, being questioned about where they belong. You could have walked up, asked politely, and accepted my membership card. Instead, you escalated it. It's a pattern you've repeated with others, from what I've heard. Karen nodded, swallowing her pride. It's true. I see that now. The mediator stepped in. Miss Billingsley, do you take responsibility for the harm you caused? Karen sniffed. Yes, she said quietly. I admit I was wrong. Joyce's voice was gentle. I want this community to heal, Karen, and part of healing is education. If we can come to an agreement, maybe community service, maybe a public apology, something that benefits everyone, I'm open to that. Karen glanced up, relief and shame mingling in her eyes. You'd really do that for me? 2 weeks later, at the next HOA meeting, Karen stood before the same crowd that had voted her off the committees. She was dressed simply, her hair pulled back, her posture humbled. A murmur ran through the audience as she approached the microphone. She cleared her throat, face flushed with nerves. Good evening. My name is Karen Billingsley, and I owe this community, and specifically Chief Joyce Smith, an apology. I made a terrible assumption and acted on it in a hurtful way. I called the police on a neighbor who had every right to be at the pool, and I falsely accused her of being aggressive. She paused, pressing a hand to her chest. I've learned, though painfully, that such actions can't be justified by calling them concern for the neighborhood. The truth is, I allowed bias and fear to guide my behavior. For that, I am truly sorry. A hush settled, broken only by the shuffling of chairs. Some people looked on with skepticism, others with grudging sympathy. In the back of the room stood Joyce, dressed in a casual blazer, her expression neutral but attentive. Karen continued, I have agreed to attend diversity and inclusion training and to do volunteer work in programs that support community building. I hope, in time, you will see genuine change in me. I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I promise to earn back your trust through my actions. She stepped away from the microphone, and a subdued ripple of applause rose, some out of politeness, others out of respect for anyone who could stand up and admit they were wrong. Karen's cheeks burned, but as she turned around, her eyes locked with Joyce's. The chief gave her a small nod of acknowledgement. It was enough to let Karen know she was on the right path, at least for now. Meanwhile, Chief Joyce Smith threw herself into police reform initiatives. She invited community leaders to meet regularly at the station, ensuring transparency and open dialogue. She visited schools, giving talks on public safety and community cooperation. The incident at the pool, though painful, became a catalyst for honest conversations throughout the town about racism, inclusion, and the kind of community Duskboro wanted to be. Karen's world had turned upside down in a hard and public way, stripping her of her self-appointed authority and forcing her to confront her biases. But the fallout opened doors for growth, for empathy, and for a real sense of community accountability. Though trust wasn't rebuilt overnight, the seeds of a more unified future had been planted. Months later, the summer heat had softened into the gentle crispness of early autumn. The leaves in Duskboro turned shades of gold and orange, lining the streets with a picturesque beauty that almost felt like an apology from nature for the turmoil of the past season. The pool was closed for the year, covered with a protective tarp, but the memory of that dramatic day remained a vivid legend in the neighborhood. On a late Saturday afternoon, the HOA organized a fall festival in the community park, complete with pumpkin carving, hayrides, and a potluck dinner. Neighborhood children raced around with painted faces, while adults mingled near the food tables. Laughter and conversation flowed, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere of just a few months prior. Chief Joyce Smith strolled around, chatting amicably with residents. Since the incident, many had come to respect her leadership style, firm but compassionate. She stopped at a booth run by the Duskboro Youth Center, praising the kids' artwork on display. The volunteer coordinator, Miss Daniels, waved enthusiastically at Joyce. Chief, come see this. She pointed to a colorful mural the kids had created under the guidance of some volunteers. Joyce admired the swirls of vibrant paint, handprints of different sizes and colors interwoven around the words "our community, our home." Miss Daniels smiled. That volunteer, Miss Billingsley, actually came up with the idea for the handprint design. She said it would remind everyone that we all belong here. Joyce felt a flicker of surprise and, yes, gratitude. She turned around to see Karen, dressed in jeans and a light sweater, nervously hovering near a table of refreshments. She was rearranging napkins and cups, occasionally glancing up as if unsure of her welcome. Joyce decided to approach. Karen saw her coming and stood a bit straighter, offering a timid smile. Chief Smith, she greeted quietly, how are you? Joyce returned the smile, extending her hand. I'm well, Karen. And you? Karen exhaled, relief evident on her face. I'm okay. Just helping out. She gestured to the mural. I suggested the handprint design. I wanted to do something that showed everyone we're one community. Joyce looked at the mural again, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. It's beautiful. Thank you for doing that. Karen blinked, momentarily stunned by the simple kindness in Joyce's tone. I really am sorry, Chief. It's been a tough lesson, but I'm doing my best to change. Joyce nodded. I see that. Keep at it. Karen swallowed, wiping a stray tear from her cheek. Thank you for giving me a chance. I'm really grateful. They stood there for a moment, the sounds of laughter and music swirling around them. It was a moment of quiet reconciliation, far from perfect or complete, but a step forward nonetheless. And so, the dust gradually settled in Duskboro. While no one erased the memory of that incendiary summer afternoon at the pool, many found ways to learn and grow from it. The new police chief earned widespread respect for her stance on accountability and her willingness to invest in community engagement. Karen, once the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood rules, discovered a new, more constructive role in helping children and fostering unity. If someone had taken a photo of that fall festival scene, Joyce and Karen sharing a tentative handshake in front of a mural proclaiming unity, it might have captured the essence of the town's journey from prejudice and misunderstanding to a hard-won sense of empathy and collaboration. Would bigotry ever vanish entirely? Perhaps not. But each day offered a new chance for the town, and for individuals, to choose understanding over ignorance. And for Chief Joyce Smith, that was reason enough to keep fighting the good fight. The confrontation at the Duskboro community pool wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a spark that ignited crucial conversations about race, belonging, and respect. In the end, Karen's world turned upside down, her fears and biases exposed. Yet, through accountability and sincere effort, she found an unexpected path toward healing and redemption. Chief Joyce Smith emerged not only as a symbol of firm justice but also of compassion, proving that true leadership can bring about growth for individuals and entire communities. If this story moved you, made you think twice, or opened your heart to second chances, then please show your support. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Adam Alpha for more stories that delve into the complexities of human nature and inspire us all to do better. Your engagement helps spread important messages that can transform lives and communities alike. Thank you for watching.